So I want to give you guys a little bit of an update on the HPA conversion project, in the sense that you no longer would need an official magazine. I consider this a failure. The thing I've kind of figured out is that what I was kind of overlooking was when you use just a hose and then connect it to an output valve, there's really no chamber, a big air volume, so it can go to the barrel and to the piston. So what now happens is, even if you put it to 140 psi, there's just not enough air and not fast enough released to do a proper shot to close the valve at the front and make it go backwards. I can just make it cycle a little bit, and when I put my finger on the barrel it helps a little bit, but it still is not enough to push back the hammer. And that's just me trying to do one shot. So imagine if you do a few after in a row, it cannot keep up. So the next thing I tried was to use this PCP air filter, and I empty it out, so there's no filter in it. It's basically just an empty chamber, to give it at least a bigger air volume right here, but then you still got a bottleneck right here to the valve, but at least it's a smaller piece, to just see if it improves it a little bit. And this is still not enough. So what you technically would need to do is have something like an air container right here and put the valve in there. So basically a magazine. So you have your valve, and directly underneath there and around in the back of the valve a big air chamber, so it can flow out really fast, do its thing, then the air can fill up again in that microsecond, let's say, so it's at the correct pressure again. For me personally, this gets way too complicated for what I wanted to do. I wanted to keep this really simple, so it was really simple to make with basic parts, so it was relatively cheap to do and safe. I find it really hard to, it is that I was happy that I have happened this laying around, but really looking for parts like this, maybe in a smaller and less. This is quite high rated. This is for 4000 psi, so it's way overkill for what we're doing right here. So you could imagine that if you can use a smaller one that is rated for less pressure and put it right there, build something around it, maybe tap a hole in there so you can mount this directly in there, you can technically do something like this, because it's made to work with air products. So let's say the mounting points are correct, but you're running into issues with finding parts like this. So not something you can, I think, buy off the shelf that will fit inside of here. So that's kind of, for me, a point that I want to quit this project. It's kind of unfortunately, because I put quite a lot of money into it on parts, and it's kind of useless now. And I was so convinced that it's going to work that I bought already extra parts to build multiple. That's kind of a bad thing on my side, but I didn't want to wait, and I want to test build multiple before I released it. But yeah, it's a failure in my mind. So also the magazines that I made and showed off, it's all a waste basically. I do have one more idea, but it will be using a normal magazine. So yeah, that's it. But I do hope that kind of my findings help for you guys that maybe do work on something like this in the future, and make something that not necessarily have to fit inside of here, but then you can at least work around a container like this from the ground up in your design. That might work, but like this it does not work. So yeah, that's it, and see you guys next time. So here we'll cover a little bit what I've done. Take an elbow piece, I put it in a 3D printed jig so I could cut it in at an angle, so I got the correct angle there. And that works fine to do so. If you use brass, that is easy to work with, so you can file it smooth and things like that. Also did the top a little bit so it cleared the ramp. I will not really taking this one apart, but there's a little plastic ramp in there just to give you a little bit of a shape to work with. And you do want to cover it all with GB weld, otherwise it will leak. That's also the thing when you are installing basically this to this, attaching it, you want to put the GB weld around here and really make sure that it's closed, and check that before you are going to do all the rest, because this is a thing that can easily go wrong. And if there is a little bit of an air pocket left that you did not see, then you have to break everything apart again and start over. So do make sure that you do that correct. And what I like to do is take a little bit of a piece of plastic and put it around the stem, let's say, the valve, so if the GB weld is getting on there, it will not really attach really to this piece. You do want to make sure that it is not really happening, because it might prevent you from pushing it in or things like that and blocks the airflow. But in my experience it was easier to remove the O-ring right here and just put the GB weld over there and in this piece and put it in there. Of course you do want to twist it up so it gets a little bit like a rat tail and feed it through there. That way you can afterwards put it out from this side. And you do want to make sure that this piece, when it opens, it cuts that it is not blocked by the angle piece, let's say. So you might want to take a little bit of material out so there is a little bit of an airflow, because there was one thing I ran in before, was this was opening but there was still a brass piece over there, and let's say that this would be the angle where the air will flow, and it was still kind of basically blocked by this piece, so that restricts the air as well. You kind of want ideally have the wall like this, so when the airflow, when it opens, air can flow directly inside of there and not having to go past this piece through a very narrow channel. So that's why I widen it out a little bit. That might be also a little bit the thing why it's not working ideally what I have. But the main issue is this: you need a big container to store a lot of air, because it needs to flow instantly in all those parts, otherwise the piston will not seal up. But that's just in case you're gonna work on something similar like this. This is just some things I figured out with trial and error. Just cover it up, because it doesn't really like, the GB weld does not like to attach so much to this. Also important is before the GB weld fully sets, when you have done that that part that goes around the piston stem, let's say, press it in. So you do want to let it sit for a few hours, but press it in, because in case it's a little bit in front of falling over it, then you can still kind of press it away and it might break off, and then you do have to deal with a little bit of a piece over there that needs to get out or something like that, but it at least you can still remove it. Especially because this part is not installed at that point yet, so you can kind of see what's going on the inside. It can fall out. There's also a good moment when you do install this ramp piece. I don't have them on hand anymore, but if you install this piece that you slide over it, I showed it in previous videos, and then attach the GB weld, it's best to do a thin layer around it, just to prevent, because the thing is, if you would put all the GB weld around there and then clamp the two shells on there, the thing is you might squeeze some GB weld inside of your output valve, because that's also the reason why I got the holes on the inside, so it can kind of go outside of there if it is too much. But if you do it just at first a thin layer, so you can make sure that everything is covered, so it's airtight, then you don't really have to worry about it. But every time, of course, when you glue things like this in, you need to place it in there, so you make sure that the alignment is correct of this piece, and this piece. Later, because I've wasted so many bigger parts like this, I just make a small piece of this, so you can just make sure that the feed ramp, this angle piece and the valve is aligned, and then you only have to print this small piece. But you can see again it got holes in there, so it can leak some of the GB weld out in case you do too much. And that's basically it. The installing of the hoses are really easy, just a twist and you put it on a pin, and that's all you do. So that's self-explanatory. You do need to put a collar in first, then you put it on there, slide it all the way on and tie it down. So that's quite easy. But yeah, that's pretty much it. In case somebody wants to take this project on for their own airsoft project and take what I learned from it, then go ahead, and good luck for you. But yeah, 140 psi, it's still in place, so that's good. And it closes.